Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to IMI Health Hour. Bioethics International has been actively engaged in many projects which are educational and humanitarian. One of the major projects that we started about 6 to 8 months ago and is now maturing is the development of an international encyclopedia of Islamic medical ethics. So today's topic is going to be basically on one of the most essential components of Islamic medical ethics, which is organ transplantation. And my guest today is Professor Rubina Naqvi from Sindh Institute of Urology and Transplantation based in Karachi. So before I invite Professor Naqvi to give a talk on the organ transplants, let me show you what we are doing on behalf of Bioethics International for the development of encyclopedia that I've just mentioned. So this is the title, an Encyclopedia of Islamic Medical Ethics, and it has an international faculty of globally renowned people from different universities in the West as well as East. And we have divided it into 14 chapters, and there are 110 topics. And there are numerous authors, renowned people right from Harvard and Emory and Oxford and Cambridge to University in Iraq, Najaf and Karbala, and India and Pakistan and Iran, of course, Tehran and Shiraz, and different universities across the world, even up to New Zealand and Australia. What I'll do is I'll just briefly tell you the topics we have chosen, and they'll put this on the YouTube for people to read as to what we're covering. So the topics, the main titles are, for example, Pillars of Bioethics, which covers autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, medical professional liability, principles of Islamic jurisprudence and medical ethics. More important things like informed consent, capacity and competence, truth-telling, breaking the bad news, a very important subject that is covered in the discussions. Then we have taken into discussions and incorporated the subject of philosophical principles of medical ethics, definition of health and sickness, philosophy of medical ethics per se, and different subjects which are given here in this list of titles. Then we're going to talk about relationship between Islamic jurisprudence and medical ethics, between jurisprudence and law, medical jurisprudence, different customs, traditions, place of reasoning in medical jurisprudence, and more pertinent topics which were already covered in the discussion that I started about 4 months ago, and I think this is my 14th lecture on the topic. Beginning of life and ethical issues related to it, like abortion, termination of pregnancy, prenatal diagnosis. In fact, Professor Rubina Naqvi recorded this lecture, and it has been on the video YouTube. Fetal reduction, sex, so many factors that are given, including important subjects which are very delicate, like saviors, siblings, ensoulment, and contraception, etc. Then an equally important subject is end-of-life ethical considerations like definition and diagnosis of death, which will be covered partly today and partly we have covered before. Human dignity and value of life, do not resuscitate, advance will, euthanasia, moribund patient, advance directives, all the relevant subjects which are contemporary in nature and futuristic as well. On the subject of research ethics, we have covered 2 or 3 in 2 or 3 lectures. The last one was by Amir Abbas, which discusses different historical perspectives as well as ethical considerations in different parts of the world. We also discussed the fundamental principles of ethical research ethics on human beings. I could not cover the animal subject, but we'll do it some stage whenever it comes. We talked about the Helsinki Declaration, Belmont's formula and principle, and we talked about different rules and regulations which have come into force in the research on human subjects. A very important and pertinent subject is the patient-physician relationship, which is again a very important subject in which we talked about paternalism, patient-centered, and I have discussed this myself. I gave a talk about 3.5 months ago on this: patients' rights, doctors' obligations, conflict of interest, all the topics that are given, confidentiality, respecting privacy, giving space to the patient and to the family. Then important element of organizational ethics in healthcare settings, which are given in a whole lot of things which we have covered, and they'll be discussed and written down as the chapters in encyclopedia by different people As I speak, the people are working across the world, and hopefully the first draft should be available, inshallah, in the next few months, and we hope to launch it at the international conference that IMI is holding as Silver Jubilee celebration in Karachi, Pakistan, and Islamabad on 24th of December and 25th of December in Karachi, and 27th and 28th of December in Islamabad. History of medical ethics has been covered by a very, very competent writer. Ethics and public health, talking about human rights and public health, common good, compulsory immunization. Of course, you know about the situation that's happening in Pakistan, polio and things. Immunization is vital, vital, absolutely. I cannot underscore it. It's so important. Screening. Then justice is a very important element in health, particularly when you have limited resources, and resource allocation has to be based on the principle of justice. How do you define that? Qualities and DALIs, which are the subjects of quality of life, global health ethics. Then we talked about ethics in medical education, a very important subject, because as medical educator, we are always concerned about the ethical issues. Until recently, it wasn't even taught as a subject, but now it's becoming more and more important. The new terminology which has come in the last 2-3 years is called hidden curricula in medicine, which in fact covers moral attitude, behavior, the third dimension of medical ethics apart from knowledge and skills. Then novel technologies which are coming up, and I have a very good friend in Canada, Naqvi Sayed. He was my guest last year, who is the inventor of the brain chip implant. He is writing a wonderful chapter. Then we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Shabih Sayed, who's written on genetic manipulation. Then the professors on gene therapy. All these subjects that are given here, the 3D bioprinting, which is an essential component of the futuristic medicine. Somebody is discussing that. Rubina is going to talk about transplants today, and that is the subject of discussion today. That we're going to talk about the tissue transplantation, organ transplantation from a living donor, from a cadaver, from brain dead donors, the definition of death, the definition of brain dead people, and other elements which are given here. So this is the list of my topics that not my topics, our topics in the Encyclopedia of Islamic Medical Ethics, which is under preparation. So there's a whole lot of people are working at the moment, and inshallah soon the first draft will be available. So now I'm going to invite Professor Rubina Naqvi to give a talk on ethical issues in organ transplantation. Welcome, Rubina.
So thank you for your kind introduction, and
I'll have your picture on the
already introduced the topic for today, that is organ transplantation. I will just give here a list of the organs, solid organs, which can be transplanted in adults or children in case of end-stage organ failure. Some of the organs which are paired in body, like kidneys, or the multi-regulated organs like liver, can be taken from the live donors, while the others are usually they are taken from dead persons. So as we will go further down, we will discuss the details of it. Next slide.
So I've got the slide of solid organ transplants in front of you. It talks about adults and children with end-stage organ failure.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about that?
Yes. I have talked about this solid organ transplantation, and we can move to the next slide, which is tissues being transplanted.
Thank you.
And it gives a list of the tissues which can be transplanted. It is heart valve, pericardium, skin, bone, vein, fascia, ligaments, etc. Next slide, please.
Thank you.
So, talking about the current status of transplantation, as you can see that I have given the blank places here, because even with the countries like US, where there is central registry system, and all the patients on waiting list for transplant, or adding to this list, or dying from the disease, they are registered. But many of the countries, they don't have central registry system, so we cannot get the exact figure that how many people are already waiting for organ transplants world over. Next slide. So, since the initiation of the transplant, much improvement has been made in immunosuppressors and anti-rejection therapy, and long-term graft survival has shown a sharp rise over the years. And this brings public confidence in transplants. On one hand, and on the other hand, the population is aging, and there is a rise in prevalence of systemic diseases like hypertension and diabetes, resulting in more and more people adding to transplant waiting pool with a rather steady supply of organs. Or I would say that pool of the living donors has rather decreased with a smaller family size over the last few decades. Having said that the waiting list on transplant is growing day by day, and the supply is static. So, physicians and scientists, they are working together to bring some point where human beings can benefit with the science. So, the possibility of the xenotransplant was considered, and there was experimental transplants have been done with using double liver in humans, and the person survived about 6 months. And then a lot of research and work has been going on use of the stem cells. Next slide. Coming to the issues which are related to the transplant, one big issue is how the available organs can be allocated. Who will get these scarce organs? Those who have no family donors and cannot get the live donor transplant, or those who are breadwinners for the family or supporting the family, or there should be a gender discrimination for organ recipients, or we should deny organs where the smokers or drug abusers or prisoners, or where we can think that this particular person is not mentally sound enough to be compliant with immunosuppressive medicine in later life. So who should get the organ? So one issue is the allocation of the organ. And other big issue is allocation of the budget. Like in countries like Pakistan, where health budget is very limited. So one will argue that in a country where children are dying with diarrhea or young women are dying with preventable causes during childbirth, so in such circumstances, whether a reasonable amount of budget should be allocated to transplant. So this is another issue. Then comes the issue of the sale of organs should be allowed, if someone is in need of money, can sell organs, and the one who is in need of organs will receive if he or she has money. Then within the living donors, how these living donors should be or could be regulated. Like in a family size of 4 or 6, who should be the donor? Among the siblings, whether female donor would be considered more, or the male donor would be considered more. So all these issues are quite relevant, and they are always in discussion in the situation of transplant. with the consideration of the xenotransplant, there is always a risk of trans-species infection. Then the ethics of using human stem cells are proven while we were discussing one last time, I described three types, the recombinant, reproductive, or the therapeutic. So cloned organs will fall in category of therapeutic cloning. And scientists hope that one day the therapeutic cloning can be used to generate tissues and organs for transplant. Next slide. Common problems in situation of transplant. On wider scale, the public is not very well aware of possibilities and details of organ donation and transplant. Even the healthcare professionals, they lack knowledge about the subject. And everyone speaks about religion, but what religions actually say about transplant is not very well approached by majority. In almost all countries, they have a designated law, but the details of the legislation and it's into the law followed by how many is difficult to. In some countries, there is a breach in law every now and then. Then the reporting of brain death from the centers, from the ICU where person is found brain dead, whether the treating physicians or the team there would report to relevant people or the living body from where the organs can be given to the required person. Then many of the hospitals, they don't have a strong infrastructure where the people with trauma can be taught and can be supported with the ventilators. And in case of the diagnosis of brain death, can be given enough time to the family and the hospital management to approach the transplant surgeon, the transplant team, and with the trained transplant coordinator or the counselor who can talk to the family of the patient who has been diagnosed with brain death. These are all problems which come across in situation of transplant. Next slide. Society plays a role at each and every level and increase the public awareness as we do with the media or we approach to the school levels or college students, and then we appoint our counselors there so that they can periodically they can spread this knowledge of how organ transplantation can be increased or who can be the donor and in what situations organs can be received from a donor. Organ donation on one hand is helping to the suffering humanity, people who are with end-stage organ failure, while on the other hand, family is undergoing through a stress, the death of a dear one. And if we do not utilize organs from brain dead persons, it's like the organs wasted are the life lost. Next slide. Among the living organ sources, next slide. Number one is the related uh, organ donation, which is from the siblings or from children to their parents or from their spouses. And they are presumed to be the most ethical form of organ donation because the motives behind the first degree living-related donations are understandable. And one may assume that the living donation between the relatives carries the same altruistic motive. In later organ donation, the donor saves the life and attains the well-being of its immediate relative by accepting the physical injury and debilitation to self. And it also helps in later part of life, like because the recipient has to take immunosuppression for lifelong. So if a family member has donated the organ, it would also take care of the recipient in later years. Next slide. The paid organ donation is a very unethical practice, and it exploits actually the powerless of this world, because the one who is selling the organ must be from a circle of society where they have very limited resources. And whatever the perception of this practice in developed countries, it is actually widespread across the world. And there are regional variations in its acceptance and its practice. And some countries, they have law, and still the practices undermined in some parts of the country. Next slide. Altruistic organ donation actually is, by definition, altruism is the purpose or practice of unselfish concern for the welfare of others. And unrelated donors who have stable and close emotional relationship with their recipient, spousal concerns can also be included in this, or the close friends or first cousins or some of other society members can donate altruistically. Next slide. Another situation is the consideration of minors in the donor. And because for transplant, in the situation of living donor must be an adult more than 18 years of age. But in some circumstances, some physicians or some centers consider adults for donor as a donor. Next slide. Coming to the cadaver, or what we call it now, deceased transplantation. Next slide. There can be two sources. One is after brain death, and other is non-heart beating, and I will come to both of these. For brain death, there is a criteria. To confirm the brain death, one has to fulfill these criteria. Number one is that the person must be in an ICU on ventilator support, and this criteria of brain death would be assessed by a neurologist with a time apart for 24 or 48 hours. Like the neurologist would examine a person one morning and again on the next morning, and will repeat all these tests to confirm the criteria. And only after doing these tests on two occasions with 24 or 48 hours apart, only then he or she would say that this person is brain dead. And once the brain is dead, then then it is actually dead. Next slide. What happens is when the brain death is confirmed and family is approached for organ retrieval, telling them that your patient is brain dead. A consent hierarchy starts there. That who will give the consent to retrieve the organ? Person may have already made the wish to donate the organ in case of brain death, but the time when the person is brain dead, there could be a number of people around, like a spouse or elder children or an adolescent or a young adult. The parents can come, or the siblings or the grandchildren. So, or guardian of a person. So anybody can come and say that they are not willing to donate, and in that case, physicians had to comply with the wishes of the family there, and family has the power to because an individual express wish for donation, for example. Next slide. Non-heart-beating donors are those where after brain death, family wishes to continue the respiratory support till the heart stops. Because somehow they cannot take this that the monitor is showing the cardiac activity and their loved one is already dead. So they say that we want to donate the organs of our family member, but we want that heart should stop. So these donors are labeled as non-heart-beating donors. And again, the donation, the organs can only be received when a person is in the hospital environment, in the ICU, and already on ventilator. Next slide. Coming to the legal issues, I will talk about the law in country, the Pakistan. Next slide. Renal transplant started in Pakistan in 1979, and there was no law till 2010. So in 1990s, the transplant activity initially increased more than 500, and in later 90s it increased to more than 1,000 per year. And most of the transplants were going on with the unrelated paid commercial donors, and foreigners were coming here. They were getting the package, and packages were announced on internet that this is the transplant package, and country was labeled as organ bazaar or transplant therapy, because people were coming from all over the world to get a transplant. Before it increased in Pakistan, it was actually happening in India, but India got law in 1996, and after that, this activity was increased in Pakistan. In Pakistan, in 2007, the ordinance was passed, and which later took shape of a bill for organ transplantation, and it was unanimously approved by the houses of legislature, National Assembly, and the Senate. Next slide. And there was a transient drop in the number of transplants was seen after this organ transplant law was implemented in 2010. But after a short while, the physicians were back in their business. Next slide. As you can see in this newspaper report, that Omani woman, she died during the kidney transplant, and this was from October 2010. So very shortly after Abdullah was implemented. Next slide. And this is a report from August 2011. Which is that detailed purchase that was in full swing in Punjab. And mostly the cities of Lahore and Pindi were places illegal transplant. Next slide. Human Organ Transplant Act or Transplantation Act, but HOTA is the body of organ retrieval and organ transplantation, and designated medical doctor in this body, HOTA, is authorized in writing the removal of any organ from the body of a person who has died in the hospital for the purpose of transplantation of organs. And this HOTA person, the designated doctor, has also a role play in live organ transplantation, and they have to assist each and every transplant in that country. That it was according to the design law, because the donor is a genuine family donor, or there was under carpet monitoring going on. So basically, HOTA prohibits the purchase or sale of the organ. Next slide. Any person can make a living will for the consent of withdrawal of life support, or one can designate another to make decision in case if one lands in ICU or in situation of brain death. And this power of attorney can be designated by any person and who can make his or her will. Next slide. Coming to the social issues in the transplant. These were two studies which were conducted by these two people here, and they went to some small towns of Punjab, and some of these towns they had the one was a small town which is each and every adult has a scar on down which has donated kidneys. And when they were interviewed to undertake this history, most of them they said that this was their majburi, it was beyond their control, and they had to pay their debts, and there was no other source of income. So it was basically those who sell their kidney, there was an exploitation of these poor. Next slide. And these were the pictures taken from different media sources. This was from the town where all adults they had left with only one kidney. Next slide. And all international media was full with these headings of CNN, BBC, the Guardian saying that transplants were in talks with Pakistan, where poverty and lack of regulation in the trading human organs. Next slide. Not only in Pakistan, some other countries were also found engaged in this business of trafficking of organs. And this was a report from Philippines and their local newspaper in the Times, which was saying that in months around 3,000 people admit having stolen a kidney. Next slide. Another hot topic was this using of organs from the prisoners in China, and it remained in international media for many years. Next slide. Actually, International Transplant Society proposes that all the prisoners on the death sentence, they would donate their organs, and they said that there should be no financial benefit to the family or the individual would be given to keep it clear and fair. And people on the waiting list with all preset protocols of the selection would be selected for organ transplantation from prisoners. And organ retrieval would be only with the consent of the prisoner. Like if the prisoner would agree on giving the organs after death. And those who were proposing this kind of transplant, they come forward with the argument that this can address the organ shortage, and the prisoners may have a chance of doing some good to the community. And prisoners will be executed anyway, the organs will be wasted. So this was also discussed in detail at different forums, and the counter argument would brought forward that organ shortage cannot be addressed just by using the executed prisoners' organs, because according to one figure in 2017, there were 100 people executed worldwide, other than China, because China has a figure of around 5,000 people in 1 year, and this was published in Lancet in 2004. Even if 5,000 people are getting execution, their organs, all of them are not fit enough to donate their organs, even if they wish or if they give the consent. And these 5,000 organs can be used only for limited number of people on the waiting list. So the organ shortage cannot be addressed solely from this source. Then the consent would never be free will or free wish in environment of present, how free can it be? And when there is the law, there is already a coercion come here. So, and then the physician would be involved in retrieving the organs, so the physician's dignity would be compromised here. So all these factors were discussed as counter arguments for this. Next slide. Now coming to the what different religions say about organ transplant, I will touch upon the major religions from the world. Next slide. In Buddhism, which is an ancient religion, there are no rules for or against organ donation. But what is central to Buddhism is a wish to relieve the suffering of humanity or human beings. So there may also be occasions when organ donation may be seen as an act of charity. The decision for or against for organ donation relies very much on an individual decision, and people may decide for or against it without one choice being seen as right and the other wrong from their religious point of view. Next slide. Some Buddhists, including those who are followers of Tibetan Buddhism, believe that consciousness may stay in the body for some time after the breath has stopped. So this would be considered in case of brain death and retrieval of organ after brain death. Until the consciousness leaves the body, it is important the body remains undisturbed. So Tibetan Buddhists may have some concerns that an operation so soon after death may damage the consciousness and cause harm to their future life. But others may decide this final act of generosity can only have positive ramifications. Next slide. Hinduism is the religion of the majority of the people in India and Nepal, and it also exists among significant population outside this continent. Unlike most other religions, Hinduism has no single founder and no single scripture and no commonly agreed set of teachings. Next slide. There is no religious law which prohibits Hindus from donating their organs and tissues. And life after death is a strong belief of Hindus and is an ongoing process of rebirth. This could be seen as reflecting positively on the concept of organ donation and transplantation. It's karma. A minority would argument, though, that it might hinder the cycle of rebirth. So this would be a disadvantage. However, most Hindus, they would view this argument as selfish, and they would go for transplant. Next slide. In Sikhism, they have no objections to the donation and transplantation of organs. Their philosophy and teaching has great emphasis on the importance of giving and putting others before oneself. So they stress the importance of the noble dreams and selfless giving and sacrifices. Saving a human life is one of the greatest things one can do according to the Sikh religion. So for this reason, donating organs after death is acceptable to Sikhs. And Sikhs believe in life after death and a continuous cycle of rebirth. But the physical body is not created in this cycle. And the soul of a person is eternal. But the body is simply fashioned perishable. If another person can make use of organs from a Sikh's body, this is a good thing. Next slide. In Christianity, sacrifice and helping others are key themes across all forms of Christianity, and therefore a decision to donate organs is seen as a positive thing. Christians should be encouraged to help others in need, and they look upon organ donation as an act of love and a way of following Jesus' example. Next slide. All many friends of Protestant denominations, they support organ donation, whether they see it as an individual choice motivated by compassion or encourage it as an act of charity. The Vatican strongly supports organ donation. Pope John Paul II, in an address to the participants of the Society for Organ Sharing, talked about in favor of the transplant. And Eastern Orthodox Christianity and most Pentecostal and evangelical churches, they also support the organization. Next slide. According to Islamic teachings, the majority of the Muslim scholars and jurists belonging to various schools of Islamic law invoke the principles of proprietary of saving human life and hence gave precedence over any other argument. This fatwa, as mentioned here, the date and the time was issued. The Grand Mufti of Egypt has issued this fatwa, and then his successor Mufti again in 1966 and later on in 73 and 79. They were all in favor of transplantation, and so, therefore the practice of organ transplantation, both from the living sources and the cadaver sources, are undergoing. And the main major Islamic countries, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, and Turkey, etc. Next slide. The brain death concept is actually there is no consensus on brain death among different scholars, and some of them they say that this consensus is actually lacking in physicians because some of the scholars they say that if all physicians agree upon one definition of brain death and they are convinced, then we can discuss and give rulings over this particular issue. So, next slide.
This is your last slide, Rubina. This is the last slide.
Yes, the most detailed fatwa on organ transplantation was that of the 4th International Conference of Islamic Jurists. It was held in Jeddah in 1988. And it endorsed all previous fatwas on organ transplantation, and they clearly rejected any trading or trafficking of organs. And it stressed the principles of altruism. So this was my last slide.
Thank you so much, Professor Rubina Naqvi. Your talk is of immense importance because you're working in one of the premier institutions on urology and transplantation, one of the best in the world, that is SIUT. And I know that you work with Professor Adib Rizvi, who's a legend. He's an amazing person. I've known him personally for years and years, and may he live for 1,000 years. He's a blessing to mankind. He's a true servant to mankind and a wonderful person, and you work with him so closely. So coming from you, and I've noted that there are names of Farat Muazzam, who's a professor of ethics, and Anwar Naqvi, all these great people who have contributed to the development of the SIUT, and you are a part of that team with immense contribution. This talk is immense, it's beautiful. It's going to be a part of the Encyclopedia of Islamic Medical Ethics that I mentioned before, and inshallah this will come as a chapter from you in due course of time. I'm most grateful to you for giving the time and the honor. Please convey my salams to Professor Adib Rizvi, Anwar Naqvi, and Farat Muazzam. Until we meet again, thank you and Khuda Hafiz.